Commander Aris Thorne stared at the glowing anomaly, chronometers screaming unstable readings, his ship, the Stardust, shuddering violently. "This isn't a wormhole, Captain," his science officer, Dr. Lena Petrova, yelled over the alarms. "It's tearing reality itself." The ship's hull groaned under unseen pressures, signaling an immediate catastrophic event. A blinding flash erupted, consuming the Stardust in an instant. Commander Thorne gripped the console, his knuckles white, as the ship didn't pass through the anomalous gateway, but was pulled violently into its heart. "Hold steady, brace for impact," he yelled, his voice raw amidst the deepening hum that now vibrated through every deck. Outside the viewports, the familiar tapestry of stars warped, stretching into impossible, non-Euclidean lines, twisting and folding into geometries no human mind could truly comprehend. The very fabric of space seemed to buckle and tear. Then, with a profound, chilling suddenness, all sound ceased. The alarms died, the hum vanished, and a silence so deep it felt like a presence descended upon the bridge. The ship's lights flickered once, then extinguished, plunging the Stardust into an oppressive darkness. All power was gone. The Stardust's emergency lights sputtered to life, casting a sickly greenish glow over the bridge, revealing disoriented crew members stirring from unconsciousness. Dr. Thorne, his head throbbing, pushed himself up from the cold deck plating, his gaze immediately snapping to the main viewport. "Where are we?" he demanded, his voice raspy, the question hanging heavy in the air. His eyes struggled to comprehend the spectacle outside. The view was unlike anything he had ever witnessed in his decades of hyperspace jumps and deep space explorations. Instead of the familiar, comforting pinpricks of distant stars, the void was now alive with a riot of colors, a swirling tapestry of bioluminescent nebulae that pulsed with an inner light, interwoven with constellations he had never seen before, patterns that defied known astronomical maps, hinting at structures and arrangements impossible in their own galaxy. Dr. Lena Petrova, ever the scientist, was already hunched over a flickering console, her fingers flying across the unresponsive controls. "Sensors are reading unimaginable distances from known space, Commander," she reported, her voice hushed with a mixture of awe and profound fear, the words barely a whisper. "The astrogation charts, they're completely useless. We're beyond familiar markers, sir. It's like we've been dropped into an entirely different universe." The implications of her words hung heavy. This wasn't merely a jump across a few hundred light years. It felt like a cosmic reset, a violent tearing through the very fabric of existence that had deposited them in a realm utterly alien. Thorne could almost feel the weight of countless light years, the impossible gulf that separated them from everything they knew. The silence that had descended after the flash was now broken only by the low thrum of the struggling emergency power and the ragged breaths of a crew grappling with the terrifying reality of their situation. This was more than just being lost. It was a profound displacement, a severing from their cosmological home, leaving them adrift in a sea of unknown celestial wonders and terrifying possibilities. Just as a profound sense of isolation threatened to overwhelm them, a faint, rhythmic pulse began to echo through the Stardust's comms system. It wasn't the chaotic static of a dying ship, nor the sharp, urgent staccato of a distress call. Instead, it was something far more intricate, a sequence of melodic tones that seemed to weave together into a language ancient and undeniably alien. Ensign Jax, the comms specialist, his face a mixture of bewilderment and scientific fascination, quickly analyzed the incoming data. "It's a broadcast, Commander, undoubtedly," he announced, his voice hushed, "and it's incredibly complex. This isn't just noise, it's a structured transmission." He paused, his eyes widening as he pinpointed the source. "It's originating from that colossal structure dead ahead." Thorne's gaze snapped to the main viewport. Looming in the distance, partially obscured by the swirling, colorful nebulae, was an immense, inert crystalline structure. It defied conventional understanding of engineering or natural formation. Its facets gleamed with an inner light that seemed to absorb the vibrant hues of the surrounding cosmic tapestry rather than reflect them. The structure radiated an odd energy signature, subtle yet pervasive, that hummed just at the edge of their ship's failing sensors. It was a silent, imposing monolith dwarfing the Stardust, and it was undeniably the source of the enigmatic broadcast. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a random shift in cosmic coordinates. They had stumbled upon something monumental, something that pulsed with an ancient intellect. The melodic whispers filling the bridge now seemed to carry the weight of untold millennia, a silent beckoning from a civilization beyond their wildest imagination. The immediate, terrifying reality of their situation morphed into something else entirely, a profound curiosity. Thorne, his curiosity now eclipsing any lingering fear, ordered a slow, cautious approach towards the titanic crystalline structure. As the Stardust glided silently through the iridescent nebulae, the sheer scale of the monolith became breathtakingly apparent. It wasn't merely large, it was an entire floating city, its every facet shimmering with an internal luminescence that pulsed in sync with the melodic broadcast. Dr. Petrova, her eyes glued to her flickering console, let out a gasp. "No external power readings, Commander," she reported, her voice hushed with wonder. "It's alive, organic almost. The structure itself is generating its own energy, a kind of living, crystalline lattice." She traced a finger across a schematic that showed the city's complex internal architecture, a fractal beauty that defied all known principles of engineering and metallurgy. The Stardust, dwarfed by the immense presence before it, began a graceful, almost reverent approach towards what appeared to be colossal, silent gates. These weren't gates in the traditional sense, but massive, arching apertures that seemed to open and close with an imperceptible shift in the city's internal light, inviting them inward. An unsettling sense of anticipation settled over the bridge crew. This wasn't just a discovery, it was an encounter, a direct invitation from an intelligence so far removed from their own understanding that it felt less like a technological marvel and more like a sublime cosmic entity. The light from the Crystal City flowed around the Stardust, bathing the bridge in a captivating, multi-hued glow that filled the viewport, a silent, breathtaking spectacle that promised answers to questions they hadn't even known to ask. The colossal gates of the Crystal Citadel opened soundlessly, not with a grinding of gears or the hiss of hydraulics, but with an almost organic unfurling of light, revealing an inner chamber that defied conventional physics. Within, swirling patterns of iridescent energy illuminated intricate pathways that seemed to weave and undulate like living veins. Thorne, his breath catching in his throat, issued a calm, measured command. "Pilot, proceed with caution, maintain deflector shields." The Stardust, a mere speck against the Titan before it, eased forward, gliding into the cavernous space. The silence, previously broken only by the melodic alien broadcast, was now punctuated solely by the low, steady hum of the Stardust's engines, amplifying the profound mystery of the structure they were entering. This wasn't merely a space, it was a boundless expanse contained within walls of pure light, each shimmering facet reflecting their ship in 1,000 fractured images, creating an almost disorienting sense of limitless depth. The air itself felt different here, charged with an invisible energy, a palpable hum that resonated not just through the ship's hull, but deep within their bones, a sensation both unnerving and profoundly awe-inspiring. The Stardust pushed deeper into the Citadel's interior, each meter revealing more of the impossible architecture. What seemed like decorative patterns lining the colossal walls began to resolve into something far more profound. Ensign Jax, his face illuminated by the subtle shifting light, leaned closer to a console, his fingers flying across its surface. "Commander," he announced, his voice tight with discovery, "these aren't just decorations. They're data streams, like an ancient form of writing but alive. His words hung in the air, a bridge between scientific observation and profound speculation. The symbols, alien yet undeniably intentional, pulsed faintly, a silent rhythm against the ship's low hum. They weren't static carvings, they were dynamic, shifting patterns, almost as if thoughts themselves were being etched onto the crystalline surfaces. Dr. Petrova moved to his side, her gaze tracing the complex interplay of light and shadow on the walls. "It's a historical record, Commander," she murmured, a sense of awe creeping into her voice. "Every pulse, every flicker seems to represent a moment, a concept, a profound idea." She pointed to a section of the wall where the symbols coalesced into a more defined narrative. "This isn't just a language, it's a living archive, a collective memory etched into the very fabric of their world." The implications were staggering. They were not merely exploring a structure, they were traversing the echoes of an entire civilization, walking through the very thoughts and experiences of beings long vanished. It was like stepping into a dream, a collective consciousness made manifest in physical form, allowing them to witness a history told by light and energy, not by ink or stone. As the Stardust continued its slow, reverent journey, the nature of these data streams became even clearer. Jax, his brow furrowed in concentration, continued to interpret the complex patterns. "It's a linear progression, almost like a story unfolding," he explained, pointing to a particularly vibrant section. "They're depicting events, technologies, societal structures." But then, a subtle shift in the light caught his attention, a momentary discord in the otherwise harmonious flow. "Wait," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "there's a change in the narrative here." A darker tone, it's almost as if they're recounting a struggle, a challenge. The symbols began to pulse with a more frantic energy, their movements becoming more chaotic, less ordered. The previously harmonious ebb and flow gave way to a staccato rhythm, a visual representation of distress. It was a history, yes, but not one solely of triumph. Petrova, her eyes fixed on the accelerating rhythm of the shifting patterns, confirmed his chilling observation. "This section, it's a warning, Commander," she breathed, her voice tinged with a solemn understanding. "They're not just telling their story, they're explaining their fate." The symbols began to cascade downward, depicting a civilization grappling with an insurmountable force, a conflict that transcended their advanced technology and profound understanding of the cosmos. The images, though abstract, conveyed a powerful sense of an ending, a final, desperate struggle against an unknown adversary or perhaps an existential threat. It was a silent testament to a civilization that had reached the pinnacle of cosmic understanding, only to face an ultimate, irreversible decline. The beauty of the ever-shifting light and the grandeur of the crystalline city were now overlaid with a profound melancholy, a silent lament echoing across unimaginable distances of space and time. As the Stardust delved deeper into the Citadel's labyrinthine interior, the vibrant, glowing conduits that had narrated the Crystal Civilization's history began to converge, drawing the ship inexorably towards a central chamber. Here, the light intensified, pulsing with an almost blinding brilliance that seemed to wash over every surface, making the very air thrum with contained power. The Stardust navigated through this luminous heart, the crew silent, their faces bathed in the alien glow, a mixture of apprehension and awe etched on their features. The gentle hum of the ship's struggling emergency power was now almost completely swallowed by the profound resonance emanating from the core. Thorne, gripping the helm, felt a strange tingling sensation, a pressure building behind his eyes, as if his mind itself was being prepared for something immense, something beyond conventional sensory input. Suddenly, without warning or discernible motion, a form began to coalesce directly in their path, shimmering into existence from the surrounding light. It wasn't a solid being, not in any material sense they understood. Instead, it was an entity woven from pure energy, a vortex of incandescent light that shifted and swirled, yet held an undeniable, commanding presence. Its outlines were indistinct, constantly reforming and dissolving, like a living nebula condensed into a singular point of profound intelligence. It had no discernible features, no eyes, no mouth, no limbs, yet it radiated an aura of immense age, knowledge, and power. The sheer impossibility of its manifestation sent a shiver down Thorne's spine, a stark reminder that they were truly in a realm where the laws of their universe seemed to bend, or perhaps simply did not apply. This was not merely an advanced technological construct. This was something fundamentally different, a sentient being perhaps forged from the very elements of this cosmic phenomenon. Before anyone on the Stardust could utter a word, a voice, not heard through their comms or the ship's speakers, but resonating directly within their minds, boomed with an authority that brooked no argument. It was a symphony of thoughts, ancient and powerful, yet perfectly clear, bypassing the ears and settling deep into their consciousness. Identify yourselves, it commanded, the mental vibrations echoing through every crew member on the bridge, a pressure within their skulls. The air around the energy entity crackled visibly, tiny arcs of light dancing across its shifting form, signaling an immense raw power held barely in check. This was not a question posed out of curiosity, but a demand, an immediate and critical challenge. The light within the chamber pulsed in rhythm with its words, intensifying and receding as if the very environment was part of its being, responding to its will. Then, with an even greater force that caused the residual hum of the Stardust systems to falter momentarily, the entity's mental voice reverberated again, colder this time, imbued with a definitive sense of violation. You trespass in sacred space. The simple declaration carried the weight of eons, of boundaries ancient and inviolable. It wasn't a threat of immediate destruction, but a statement of undeniable fact, a profound judgment. The air crackled again, more intensely this time, and a strange, almost electric current coursed through the Stardust, causing panels to spark and minor systems to flicker. This wasn't merely a verbal confrontation. It was a direct challenge, a display of overwhelming might that left no doubt as to the entity's capacity to enforce its will. The ship was enveloped by an aura of raw energy, a palpable tension that underscored their precarious position as uninvited guests in a domain of profound mystery and power. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the heightened thrum of energy and the rapid, shallow breaths of the crew, each member grappling with the sudden, overwhelming realization of the impossible entity before them. "We mean no harm," Thorne projected mentally, a desperate plea forming in his mind, pushed with all his might towards the terrifyingly vast consciousness before him. He poured every ounce of sincerity he possessed into the thought, hoping it would cut through the overwhelming aura of ancient power and perceived trespass. "We were unluckily pulled here by a wormhole anomaly. We seek only to understand and return home." He focused on the raw truth of their situation, the sheer accident that had landed them in this impossible place, hoping to appeal to whatever form of reason or empathy the Guardian, as he now thought of it, might possess. The pressure within his skull intensified with each transmitted thought, as if his very mind was struggling to bear the weight of the communication, but he pressed on, driven by the desperate need to bridge the incomprehensible gap between species. His mental voice, though amplified by the entity's presence, felt small, fragile, a tiny spark against an infinite void of wisdom. He conveyed their helplessness, their lack of intent, casting them not as invaders, but as lost travelers caught in a cosmic current far beyond their control or understanding. It was a gamble, a desperate reach into the unknown, but it was their only chance, the immense energy being continued to pulsate, its swirling form seeming to contract slightly, as if processing the sheer audacity of Thorne's mental interjection. The crackling electrical currents around it briefly subsided, and the oppressive hum that had filled the chamber lessened, replaced by an almost imperceptible resonance that seemed to vibrate directly within the Stardust's very structure. This was not a verbal reply, nor even a direct thought, but a subtle shift in the entity's presence, an acknowledgement that Thorne's desperate plea had been received. It was a moment suspended in time, a fragile bridge built of pure intent between two vastly different forms of existence. The crew on the bridge remained frozen, their faces reflecting a mixture of fear and awe, their minds reeling from the direct, unmediated contact with an intelligence that defied all their scientific paradigms. They could feel the reverberation of Thorne's plea and the subtle, almost imperceptible response, a silent dialogue playing out on a cosmic stage. Then, with a force that transcended mere sound, the Guardian's presence solidified into a torrent of pure thought, not a voice, but an overwhelming download of information directly into Thorne's mind and through him vicariously into the stunned crew. It began with an image, vivid and terrifyingly clear, not the shimmering, otherworldly anomaly that had consumed the Stardust, but a different kind of wormhole, one that ripped through space-time not as a natural phenomenon, but as a deliberate, malignant tear. This was no cosmic accident. This was a wound, an intentional scar inflicted upon the fabric of existence. The vision shifted, compressing millennia into moments. Thorne saw the forces behind this unnatural tearing, entities the Guardian named the Void Eaters. They weren't beings in any sense humanity understood, but rather a consuming darkness, a hunger given form. They moved through the cosmos not to explore or discover, but to devour. The mental projection intensified, showing the Void Eaters in action. They didn't simply destroy planets or stars, they consumed entire realities, harvesting the very essence of existence, leaving behind only an empty, lifeless husk where vibrant galaxies once thrived. Thorne witnessed worlds collapsing into nothingness, civilizations extinguished in an instant, their light and life siphoned away into the insatiable maw of these cosmic predators. The scale of their malevolence was staggering, dwarfing any conflict or threat humanity had ever conceived. It was a harvesting on a cosmic scale, a horrifying industrial process applied to the universe itself. The Crystal Citadel, the Guardian, the entire advanced civilization that had built this magnificent structure, had dedicated itself to understanding and, if possible, resisting these monstrous harvesters. This was the true history etched into the crystalline walls, not just triumphs, but a desperate, ongoing struggle against an ultimate, existential threat. Then came the chilling, undeniable truth, projected with a raw urgency that vibrated through Thorne's very soul. They harvest realities, and your galaxy is next. The words weren't spoken aloud, but they echoed in his consciousness with the weight of a death sentence. The Guardian showed him visions of their own Milky Way, sparkling and vibrant, now overlaid with the shadowy tendrils of the Void Eaters preparing to descend. The anomaly that had pulled the Stardust into this distant realm wasn't random. It was a consequence, a ripple effect from the Void Eaters' relentless expansion. It was a breach, a tear in the cosmic membrane that separated their reality from the path of these devourers. The terrifying beauty of the bioluminescent nebulae and the silent grandeur of the Crystal Citadel now seemed less like a miracle and more like a cosmic warning, a testament to a previous galaxy that had faced, and likely fallen to, the same threat that now loomed over their home. The Stardust hadn't just been lost, it had been brought to a front line in a war for universal survival, a conflict that had been raging for eons, completely unknown to humanity. The chilling, shadowy presence of the Void Eaters continued to flicker within the Guardian's visions, consuming stars, entire galaxies, their method of destruction far more insidious than simple annihilation. They follow the wake of these tears, the Guardian's mental voice explained, echoing a profound, ancient terror through Thorne's consciousness, feasting on the residual energy. This was a terrifying threat far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered, directly linked to their unexpected journey. The wormhole that had swallowed the Stardust, the one they had believed to be a random anomaly, was in fact a consequence, a byproduct of the Void Eaters' insatiable hunger. It wasn't an isolated cosmic event, but a subtle, almost imperceptible ripple in the fabric of space-time, created by the very act of these entities tearing through dimensions, establishing their predatory path across the cosmos. Thorne saw, through the Guardian's overwhelming mental projection, how these cosmic predators operated. They didn't just consume matter, they consumed the very potential of existence, the light and life of entire star systems. They would arrive in a galaxy not with a bang, but with a horrifying, silent stealth, creating these tears in reality. These tears served as invisible conduits, allowing them to siphon off the energy, the vibrant essence of galaxies, leaving behind not just dead worlds, but vast, lifeless voids. It was a process of cosmic vampirism, draining the universe of its vitality piece by piece. The residual energy left behind by their destructive passage was what empowered them, drawing them ever onward towards new, untouched cosmic territories. This intricate, horrifying cycle of consumption and sustenance meant that every tear in reality was an invitation, a fresh hunting ground for these devourers. The anomaly that had pulled the Stardust was not a rare event, but an expanding network of cosmic wounds, each one a signpost for the Void Eater's relentless advance. The horrifying truth settled over Thorne. The Stardust hadn't merely stumbled through a random tear. They had been caught in a cosmic current, driven by the very machinations of these Void Eaters. Their journey, once a terrifying accident, was now revealed to be a direct consequence of a universal war, a conflict that had been raging for eons. The Guardian's chilling revelation brought into sharp focus the immense, almost unimaginable scale of the threat. This wasn't merely about the survival of humanity or even their galaxy. It was about the fundamental existence of life itself in the universe. The Void Eaters were not conquerors, they were consumptive forces, leaving nothing but emptiness in their wake. Their advance was not a march of armies, but a creeping, insidious darkness, slowly extinguishing the light of creation. The Crystal Citadel and its ancient inhabitants had been caught in this tide, and now, by a cruel twist of fate, so had the crew of the Stardust. "We can't fight them alone," Thorne communicated into the vast mental presence of the Guardian, his own thoughts now infused with a desperate urgency. He knew with a certainty that chilled him to the bone that humanity, even with all its technological advancements, stood no chance against such an overwhelming existential threat. His mind raced, grappling with the unthinkable scale of the Void Eaters, yet a tiny spark of a plan, a desperate hope began to form. He pressed the Guardian, his mental voice unwavering. How do we stop them? How do we get home? The two questions, inextricably linked, hung heavy in the profound silence that followed. The fate of his species, his very reality, depended on the answer. He understood implicitly that their survival was now entwined with this ancient cosmic entity and the knowledge it possessed. The Guardian responded not with words, but with another chilling mental projection, a vision of the anomaly that had consumed the Stardust. However, this time, the shimmering, chaotic vortex was overlaid with something far more sinister. Faint, almost imperceptible tendrils of darkness, the very essence of the Void Eaters weaving through its core. "Your anomaly," the Guardian's thoughts resonated, now tinged with a grim clarity. "It is their entry point." The vision shifted, emphasizing key points within the swirling portal, showing how it was not merely a random tear, but a weakness, a door that could be forced open from both sides. It was a breach in their reality, a vulnerable point where the physical laws of their universe were stretched thin, making it susceptible to exploitation by these interdimensional predators. The Guardian's wisdom revealed that the very path that had brought the Stardust to this distant alien realm was also the conduit for unimaginable destruction, a cosmic Achilles heel. The task ahead was monumental, a perilous, two-pronged mission that would demand unimaginable courage and precision. The Guardian's next projection outlined the impossible challenge. You must seal it from both sides. The anomaly, the tear in reality itself, had to be shut down, not just from the side of the Void Eaters, which was the Guardian's domain, but also from Thorne's home reality, their own universe. This meant that the Stardust, broken and adrift, would have to return somehow to the very point of their accidental entry, armed with a knowledge that would shatter the foundations of human understanding. The implications were staggering. To seal the tear, they would likely have to trigger a localized collapse of spacetime, a controlled demolition of reality, the very concept of which was beyond anything humanity had ever attempted. It required not just technological prowess, but an almost suicidal commitment to a universal defense. The urgency of the mission was underscored by a new vision from the Guardian. It showed not just the theoretical mechanism of sealing the anomaly, but also the consequences of failure. Thorne saw their Milky Way, familiar and vibrant, slowly being consumed, stars dimming one by one as the Void Eaters fed. He understood then that this was not merely a request, but a desperate plea from beings who had fought this war for eons, and now saw their last hope in the unlikeliest of allies, a lost human starship and its bewildered crew. The Guardian was not just offering them a way home, it was offering them a universal imperative, a chance to become unlikely saviors in a cosmic war they never knew existed. The path back through the anomaly was fraught with peril, a journey through a literal and metaphorical battlefield. They would be entering hostile territory, a zone where the fabric of reality was actively being torn apart, confronting not just the chaos of the tear, but the insidious, unseen presence of the Void Eaters themselves. The Stardust was no longer just a vessel, it was now a critical piece in a cosmic chess match, its crew suddenly holding the fate of their entire galaxy in their hands. As the full weight of their impossible mission settled upon Commander Thorne and his crew, the Guardian, sensing their profound apprehension and the daunting nature of the task, initiated a new, vital transfer. It was not a physical artifact nor a spoken instruction, but a direct infusion of ancient knowledge woven into the very fabric of the Stardust systems. The luminous entity pulsed with an ethereal intensity, and tendrils of pure light, almost like cosmic fibers, extended from its swirling form, subtly merging with the ship's primary conduits. Thorne felt a surge of energy course through his own mind, a fleeting glimpse into a vast ocean of understanding, as if the ship itself was becoming an extension of the Guardian's cosmic awareness. This was the Citadel's gift, a desperate gamble by a dying civilization to empower unlikely champions. Deep within the Stardust's core, previously dormant circuits flickered to life, glowing with an internal luminescence that mirrored the Citadel's own. This wasn't just data, it was a profound interaction, changing the very nature of the Stardust's operating principles. The ship's navigational computers, previously struggling with the anomaly's non-Euclidean chaos, now displayed intricate, shifting pathways, a roadmap through the maelstrom. Its energy systems, strained to their breaking point, began to hum with a newfound, stabilized power, drawing upon a unique, resonant frequency that seemed to emanate from the Citadel itself. Dr. Petrova, watching the ship's diagnostics panels with wide, unbelieving eyes, gasped as previously impossible readings stabilized. It's like the ship is learning," she whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of wonder and trepidation. "It's absorbing their essence, Commander, a unique energy signature perfectly attuned to the anomaly's instability. This infusion was the key, a bespoke solution forged in the crucible of eons of cosmic conflict, designed to allow the Stardust to not just survive, but to actively navigate the very tear that threatened to consume their existence." The Guardian's mental voice, now softer, almost a resonant whisper within Thorne's mind, confirmed the profound nature of this transfer. "This will allow you to navigate the wormhole's chaotic energies," it communicated, a sense of grave purpose in its thoughts. It was a promise, a beacon of hope in the overwhelming darkness. The ship's sub-light drives, once unreliable, now thrummed with a steady, almost melodic rhythm, ready to push against the insane currents of distorted space-time. The Stardust's deflector shields, which had failed so catastrophically upon their initial entry, pulsed with a renewed, vibrant strength, projecting an aura of resilience that had been utterly absent only moments before. This unique energy configuration, gifted by the ancient entity, was designed not just for passage, but for controlled interaction with the anomaly, offering them a chance to manipulate its very fabric. Yet, immediately following this profound assurance, the Guardian's mental tone shifted, injecting a sharp, vital warning that cut through the nascent hope. But the forces within remain immense, it cautioned, the words resonating with a deep understanding of the inherent dangers. The gift was powerful, but it was not a shield against all peril. The wormhole, a raw wound in reality, was still a place of unimaginable danger, its internal dynamics unpredictable, its energies volatile. This was not a voyage across calm waters with a new engine, but a plunge into a cosmic abyss armed with a barely understood, immensely powerful tool. The Stardust, even with its newfound capabilities, would be pushing against the very limits of its structural integrity and the crew's endurance. The anomaly was a battleground, not merely a passageway, and the unique energy signature, while it offered control, also meant they would be directly engaging with the chaotic energies, making their mission a constant tightrope walk between mastery and complete annihilation. With the Guardian's profound gift integrated into its very core, the Stardust, now a vessel transformed, veered sharply within the luminous heart of the Crystal Citadel. No longer adrift in despair, Commander Thorne felt a surge of grim determination. Their purpose was clear: intercept the Void Eaters. His gaze swept across the bridge, meeting the eyes of his crew. Every face, though still etched with the recent terror, now held a renewed resolve. The impossible journey back, the sealing of the tier, these were no longer theoretical tasks but an immediate life-or-death imperative. The fate of their galaxy, perhaps even their universe, now rested on the capabilities of this single, small human vessel and its crew. Dr. Petrova, hunched over a console that now glowed with unfamiliar alien symbols, her fingers flying across the controls with a new, almost intuitive speed, let out a sharp gasp. "Commander," she announced, her voice grim, cutting through the low hum of the revitalized ship. "The Guardian's calculations, they show the Void Eater's full arrival in our universe is now within hours." Not days, not weeks, hours. The word hung in the air, a bell tolling the impending doom of countless civilizations, a stark reminder of the rapidly dwindling timeline. Her eyes, wide with a terrifying certainty, met Thorne's. "We have to move, now." The urgency in her voice was palpable, a desperate cry against the relentless march of cosmic destruction. The subtle, chilling tendrils of darkness the Guardian had shown him, the harbingers of the ultimate consumption, were closer than he had ever dared to imagine. Thorne didn't hesitate. He slammed his hand onto the ship's internal comm, his voice ringing with a new authority. "All hands, battle stations, prepare for immediate departure." The Stardust lurched forward, its engines, once struggling, now roaring with the raw power of the Guardian's infused energy. The ship accelerated with astonishing speed, pushing against the ethereal currents of the Citadel, its revitalized systems straining under the sudden, immense demand. The vibrant, multi-hued light of the crystalline city streamed past the viewports, blurring into streaks of pure color. A silent farewell from an ancient civilization that had placed its last, desperate hope in their hands. They were no longer merely escaping, they were launching a preemptive strike, a desperate, final gamble against an enemy that defied comprehension. The entire journey, from their initial plunge into the anomaly to this very moment, had been an unwitting preparation for this confrontation. Every shudder of the hull, every flicker of the lights, every strained piece of equipment now seemed to work in unison, harmonizing with the Stardust's newfound, profound purpose. The fate of everything they knew hung precariously in the balance, a desperate race against the cosmic clock ticking down to zero. navigating the vortex proved to be an even more horrific ordeal than their initial accidental plunge. The Stardust, now infused with the Guardian's ancient knowledge, plunged back into the heart of the anomaly, not with the chaotic freefall of their first entry, but with a deliberate, controlled dive that still tested the very limits of its structural integrity. Wormhole energies, no longer a mere spectacle, lashed out like furious cosmic whips, tearing at the ship's reinforced hull. Hold course, maintain shield integrity. Thorne bellowed, his voice raw, straining to be heard above the groaning metal and the high-pitched whine of the struggling deflectors. The ship was no longer just entering a tier. It was actively combating a living wound in reality, pushing against unseen forces that sought to rip it apart. Temporal distortions, like unseen currents, twisted and stretched reality around them, making the stars outside the viewports appear to melt and reform in impossible geometries. Gravitational waves, unseen but profoundly felt, slammed into the Stardust, throwing crew members against bulkheads and rattling every piece of equipment. It was a cosmic tempest, a maelstrom of distorted space and time, where up and down, past and future, seemed to lose all meaning. Yet the key energy signature, the Guardian's profound gift, held them together, a shimmering, invisible tether preventing their complete disintegration. It was a delicate dance between control and chaos, a constant knife-edge balance where the slightest miscalculation could mean instantaneous oblivion. The ship vibrated with a resonant hum, a direct response to the energy signature, battling against the anomaly's inherent instability. Every meter gained felt like a monumental victory against an invisible, overwhelming foe. Dr. Petrova, her face pale but determined, called out readings from her console, her voice tight with strain. Energy fluctuations spiking, we're hitting extreme temporal shears. Ensign Jax, gripping his own station, fought to keep the ship aligned, his knuckles white as he wrestled with controls that bucked and fought against him. The anomaly wasn't a passive phenomenon. It was a dynamic, hostile environment, actively resisting their passage, almost as if it possessed a malign intelligence. Each lurch, each shudder, was a reminder of the immense, unimaginable power they were challenging, a cosmic barrier designed to keep realities separated. The Guardian's infusion, while powerful, was not a magic wand. It provided the tools, the knowledge, the means to navigate, but the sheer, raw force of the wormhole still had to be contended with meter by agonizing meter. Thorne could feel the immense pressure, not just on the ship but on his own mind, a psychic reverberation from the chaotic energies surrounding them. It was a journey into the heart of madness, a battle for every inch of progress where their survival hung by the thinnest of threads, reliant on the Stardust's newly awakened capabilities and the sheer, unyielding will of its crew. Their trajectory was a precarious tightrope walk, a ballet of calculated risks amidst overwhelming forces, a testament to the desperate hope invested in their impossible mission. Just as the Stardust seemed on the verge of being torn asunder by the anomaly's furious energies, the starfield before them snapped back into a discernible, if still warped, image. They had made it through, but the relief was short-lived, instantly replaced by a fresh wave of dread. Thorne's eyes, still reeling from the cosmic maelstrom, struggled to comprehend the terrifying panorama that unfolded before the viewport. This was not the familiar, welcoming emptiness of space, nor the tranquil, star-dusted void they had hoped to find. Instead, a chilling, almost suffocating darkness dominated their view. Scores of shadowy, amorphous vessels, like predatory leviathans from the deepest abyss, were already materializing out of the swirling cosmic dust. These were the Void Eater's vanguard, not merely approaching, but phasing into existence with an unnerving, silent grace, their colossal forms blotting out the distant starlight. The sheer scale of the enemy fleet was enough to steal the breath from any human. These were not ships built for elegant flight or swift maneuver. They were monstrous, organic contortions, their surfaces absorbing light rather than reflecting it, giving them the appearance of gaping holes in the fabric of space itself. They pulsed with an inner, malevolent cold, like cancerous growth spreading across the universe. These were the devourers, vast and terrifying, their arrival signaling the commencement of the harvest. Their forms defied conventional aerodynamics or propulsion, suggesting a technology or perhaps a biology so alien that it warped the very concepts of mass and energy. They moved with an unsettling fluidity, their vague outlines shifting and reforming, an unsettling ballet of cosmic horror. Commander Thorne, his mind grappling with the impossible sight, felt a surge of raw, primal fury. They had risked everything, endured unimaginable torment, only to arrive directly into the maw of the beast. The tactical display, flickering to life with agonizing slowness, painted a grim picture. A single, battered human starship against a force so vast it seemed to stretch to the very edges of their perception. The Stardust was hopelessly outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched, yet retreating was not an option. This was the front line, the cosmic beachhead, and if they fell, their entire universe would follow. A guttural roar tore from Thorne's throat, a sound born of desperation and defiance. Open fire, all weapons, concentrate all fire on the lead vessels. He barked the command, his hand slamming down on the master attack console. The Stardust's energy cannons, revitalized by the Guardian's gift, flared to life, spitting brilliant lances of white-hot plasma into the oppressive darkness. The ship shuddered under the recoil, a tiny spark of light against an encroaching tide of shadow. Missiles, guided by the Stardust's newly enhanced targeting systems, streaked across the void, arcing towards the massive, formless shapes. The fate of the galaxy, the future of countless civilizations, the very essence of existence, now hung by the thinnest of threads as the Stardust, one small ship and its beleaguered crew, engaged in a desperate, outnumbered battle against the ultimate cosmic devourers. As the Stardust revitalized, weapons spat streams of superheated plasma and missiles streaked across the void. Dr. Petrova, her face a mask of fierce concentration, initiated the Guardian's sealing protocol. Her fingers flew across the main console, now a dizzying tapestry of swirling alien symbols superimposed over familiar human readouts. This wasn't just a simple command. It was a complex sequence, a dance choreographed by an ancient intelligence designed to unravel the very fabric of the anomaly. A low, throbbing hum began to emanate from the ship's core, resonating through Thorne's bones, and then, with a profound, almost visceral lurch, a massive energy surge ripped through the wormhole. The anomaly, previously a swirling chaos of light and warped space, now pulsed erratically, contracting and expanding like a dying heart. It's destabilizing the tier. Petrova cried out over the ship's internal comms, her voice a mixture of triumph and alarm. The energy signature from the Guardian's gift, specifically designed for this purpose, was like a cosmic scalpel, precisely targeting the intricate weaknesses the Void Eaters had exploited to create their entry point. This wasn't about brute force, it was about vibrational harmony, or, in this case, disharmony disrupting the very resonance that held the tier open. The anomaly began to twist in on itself, its edges fraying, light and shadow battling for dominance as the very laws of physics writhed in agony. However, the Void Eaters, true to their terrifying nature, proved to be far more than mindless devourers. Even as the wormhole began its agonizing collapse, their response was immediate and chillingly intelligent. The shadowy vessels, sensing the fundamental shift in their gateway, began to pulse with a dark, absorbing energy, attempting to counteract the Guardian's protocol. But the Void Eaters are adapting, Petrova yelled, her voice now tinged with desperation. Her console screamed with new, alarming data as the enemy's vessels began to emit a counter-frequency, a discordant hum designed to shore up the unraveling anomaly. They were pouring their own parasitic energy into the tier, fighting to keep their cosmic maw open, desperate to maintain their access to this new, untouched galaxy. It was a tug of war on a universal scale, a battle of wills between an ancient protector and ultimate predators, with the Stardust caught squarely in the middle. The battle outside raged with renewed ferocity, the Stardust's weapons firing relentlessly, tearing into the advancing Void Eaters, trying to buy Petrova precious seconds. Each hit on an enemy vessel seemed to momentarily falter their insidious counter-efforts, but the sheer numbers of the Void Eaters were overwhelming, their cold, dark forms pressing in on all sides. Caught between the closing anomaly and the relentless assault of the Void Eaters, the Stardust became a tiny, beleaguered fortress. The ship shuddered violently, thrown about by the collapsing wormhole and the near misses from the enemy's retaliatory blast. Alarms blared throughout the bridge, a chaotic symphony of impending doom. The very air seemed to crackle with raw, untamed energy as the wormhole began to collapse in earnest, its edges shrinking inward faster now, threatening to trap them in an ever-diminishing pocket of reality. The swirling colors outside compressed into a rapidly tightening kaleidoscope, and the sounds of the battle became muffled, distorted, as if space itself was being squeezed. Thorne gripped the helm, his knuckles white, his gaze fixed on Petrova, willing her to succeed, knowing that this was their only chance. The Stardust was becoming a prison, a tiny ship in a cosmic vise, with the walls of reality closing in around them, and the Void Eaters, infuriated, pressing their advantage, desperate to snuff out the irritating speck that dared to threaten their harvest. "We need more power," Dr. Petrova's voice shrieked, raw with desperation, cutting through the cacophony of alarms. The Guardian's sealing protocol, the last hope for their galaxy, was faltering, its intricate energy patterns flickering erratically on her console. The Void Eater's counter-frequency, a dissonant hum of pure malevolence, was overpowering it, threatening to reopen the cosmic wound. The Stardust groaned, its very structure groaning under the strain of holding back the encroaching darkness. Thorne, his eyes fixed on the rapidly closing but still vulnerable anomaly, knew there was only one impossible option left. His mind raced, calculating the grim consequences, but the fate of billions outweighed the life of one ship, one crew. Route all primary power to the sealing array, Thorne roared, his command slicing through the chaos, leaving no room for argument or hesitation. Every ounce of energy, every watt of power used to sustain life support, navigation, internal lighting, even the critical defensive shields would have to be stripped. He understood the immediate, catastrophic implications. The Stardust would be rendered a dead ship, a derelict hulk in the heart of a cosmic battlefield, utterly vulnerable to the raging Void Eaters. But the anomaly, the gateway to their home, had to be sealed, no matter the cost. His decision was a stark, agonizing choice, a monumental gamble where the survival of their species hinged on a single, desperate act of self-sacrifice. The ship's internal lights flickered violently, then died, plunging the bridge into near darkness, illuminated only by the frantic emergency strobes and the eerie glow of the failing anomaly. As the power drained from the Stardust systems rechanneled to the straining sealing array, Thorne knew he had to buy Petrova more time, even if it was just seconds. With a grim, resolute set to his jaw, he pounded his fist on the master attack console. "I'll hold them off as long as I can," he bellowed, his voice filled not with false bravado, but with a fierce, burning resolve. It was a desperate, heroic pledge, a solitary stand against an unimaginable tide. The remaining primary weapon systems, now drawing on the supercharged energy diverted from the rest of the ship, pulsed with a renewed, ferocious intensity. The Stardust's main cannon spat streams of incandescent plasma, brighter and more powerful than ever before, each shot a defiant scream against the encroaching darkness. Missiles, now armed with enhanced payloads, streaked outward, seeking their targets with a terrifying precision, a final, desperate barrage against the relentless advance of the Void Eaters. This was not a tactical maneuver, It was a last, agonizing act of defiance, a desperate gamble to provide the precious few moments Petrova needed to complete the impossible task, knowing that the Stardust, and perhaps he himself, would not survive the cosmic storm. The Stardust's primary weapons systems, once the defiant roar of humanity, now flickered like dying embers, their brilliant lances of plasma dimming, sputtering against the encroaching tide of darkness. Each shot fired was a monumental drain on the rapidly depleting power reserves, a desperate gasp of life from a ship bleeding out. Thorne, hunched over the helm, felt the vibrations of each outgoing blast reverberate through his very bones, a diminishing thump against the relentless, suffocating pressure of the Void Eaters. The ship's shields, once a shimmering, impenetrable barrier, now pulsed erratically, failing in sections, allowing the chilling vacuum of space to leach into the bridge through microscopic cracks, painting frost onto the once warm metal. Yet, with every flicker, every diminishing flash of energy, Thorne's desperate assault bought precious seconds, moments carved from the jaws of oblivion, moments that Dr. Petrova, her face streaked with sweat and grime, used to push the Guardian's sealing protocol to its absolute limit, coaxing the last vestiges of power from the dying ship. "It's nearly done, Commander," Petrova shrieked, her voice hoarse, echoing across the groaning bridge. Her eyes, wide and luminous in the dim, emergency light, were fixed on the console, where the complex alien symbols glowed with a furious intensity, converging, intertwining, forming the final sequence. The wormhole, a gaping maw that threatened to swallow their reality, pulsed wildly, its edges fraying, contracting with violent shudders. It was a cosmic heart attack, a chaotic dance of light and shadow struggling to close. But the Void Eaters, sensing the impending closure, redoubled their efforts, their shadowy forms pressing in, engulfing the Stardust, their sheer numbers blotting out the stars. They were almost upon the ship, a living curtain of dread, their amorphous bodies rubbing against the hull, a monstrous, silent caress that promised immediate, utter annihilation. "Get out of here, Commander," Petrova screamed, her voice cracking now, her words a desperate plea. She knew, as Thorne knew, that the Stardust was doomed, a sacrificial lamb on the altar of galactic survival. The ship's internal comms crackled, filled with the desperate cries of crew members, their positions being overrun, the sounds of tearing metal, and the chilling whisper of vacuum. The wormhole, now a mere fraction of its original size, writhed like a dying serpent, its energies oscillating between furious expansion and violent contraction, threatening to tear the Stardust apart regardless of the Void Eater's efforts. The very air on the bridge thrummed with a palpable sense of finality, a profound, chilling silence that seemed to precede the inevitable. Just as the Stardust began its agonizing, structural unraveling, a localized warp field, a final, desperate gift from the Guardian, activated with a silent, blinding flash. It wasn't a sudden, violent ejection, but a gentle, almost reverent release, severing a small, hastily launched escape pod from the dying ship. Commander Thorne, his body racked with a mixture of grief and adrenaline, found himself strapped into the pilot's seat of the tiny craft, Dr. Petrova and Ensign Jax beside him, their faces pale and drawn. The pod's internal view screen, a crude, unshielded portal compared to the Stardust's magnificent bridge, offered a horrifying, unvarnished final glimpse of their ship. The wormhole, its closing, Ensign Jax gasped, his voice thin with awe and terror, his face pressed against the view screen, watching the impossible spectacle unfold. The Stardust, their home, their sanctuary, their last desperate hope, was vanishing, but it wasn't a quiet fading, it was a violent, cataclysmic implosion. The Guardian's sealing protocol, supercharged by Thorne's final desperate act aboard the Stardust, was now tearing the anomaly apart from within. The massive, swirling vortex, once a pathway for destruction, was recoiling upon itself, a cosmic wound cauterizing with unimaginable force. The Stardust was caught in its final, agonizing contraction, twisted and torn as the fabric of space-time snapped back into place. Its familiar silhouette, battered but proud, stretched and distorted, then dissolved into a shower of light and debris absorbed by the collapsing tunnel. It wasn't simply destroyed, it was unmade, its very existence erased by the raw power of the closing wormhole. The escape pod, flung clear by the Guardian's parting grace, tumbled end over end, buffeted by the residual shockwaves of the implosion. Outside the viewport, the blinding light of the closing anomaly pulsed for a final, agonizing moment, then winked out, leaving behind only the cold, silent expanse of space. The Void Eaters, caught off guard by the sudden, cataclysmic closure of their portal, scattered, their amorphous forms recoiling from the absence of their entry point. Without their cosmic highway, they were disoriented, their predatory instincts momentarily overridden by the sheer, unadulterated shock of the anomaly's annihilation. The immense, shadowy armada, moments before a suffocating presence, now seemed confused, their dark energy signatures flickering with uncertainty. They had lost their access, their foothold in this reality. Thorne, his eyes burning with unshed tears, watched the last vestiges of the Stardust disappear, a silent testament to its sacrifice. The silence in the escape pod was deafening, broken only by the ragged breaths of the three survivors. They were adrift, tiny specks in the vast, indifferent cosmos, but they were alive. And more importantly, the gate was closed. The immediate, overwhelming threat of the Void Eaters was gone, at least for now. But the cost had been immense. The Stardust was gone, its crew lost, swallowed by the anomaly they had so bravely sealed. Yet in the heart of Thorne, a fierce, burning resolve solidified. They had carried out their mission, they had protected their home. Now they were truly alone, adrift in the immense, silent void, with only the echoes of a cosmic war and the chilling knowledge of what lay beyond the sealed tier. The tiny escape pod, a fragile bubble of humanity adrift in the chilling cosmic expanse, bore silent witness to the cataclysmic end of the wormhole. Outside the scarred viewport, the maelstrom of light, color, and raw energy that had defined the anomaly reached its furious crescendo. It wasn't a gentle fading, nor a graceful dissipation, but a violent, self-devouring implosion, a cosmic wound stitching itself shut with unimaginable force. The last vestiges of the Stardust, caught within its death throes, were not merely destroyed. They were unmade, unraveled, their very atoms scattering into the void as the fabric of space-time snapped back into place. The final, blinding flash momentarily seared the eyes of Thorne, Petrova, and Jax. A searing image of sacrifice burned into their retinas. This wasn't just a tear in reality closing. It was a cosmic cleansing, a desperate act of universal self-preservation. And in that final, terrifying implosion, several of the Void Eaters, those shadowy leviathans of consumption that had dared to venture too close to their dying portal, were caught. They were not merely blasted apart by conventional force, but consumed by the very absence of space, their amorphous forms twisted and contorted by the collapsing dimensions. The blinding flash that marked the wormhole's annihilation simultaneously marked the eradication of those few unlucky predators, a stark testament to the raw, untamed power unleashed by the Guardian's desperate, infused protocol. Their dark energy signatures, once so menacing, simply winked out of existence, leaving behind no trace, no debris, no whisper of their malevolent presence. It was an unexpected bonus, a fleeting victory carved from the jaws of overwhelming loss, a silent vindication for the Stardust's ultimate sacrifice. Dr. Petrova, her face streaked with tears and grime, pressed her forehead against the cool, unyielding composite of the viewport. Her voice, a ragged whisper thick with emotion, barely broke the profound silence within the pod. "It's done," she breathed, the words a hollow echo in the confined space. The cosmic gate was closed, the immediate threat averted. Her shoulders slumped, the immense tension that had gripped her for what felt like an eternity finally releasing its hold, only to be replaced by a crushing wave of grief. But at what cost? The question hung heavy in the air, unanswered, unanswerable. It was a lament for lost friends, for a lost ship, for the innocence of a universe unknowingly teetering on the brink of annihilation. The silence that descended upon them was not the comforting silence of deep space they once knew, a friendly canvas upon which stars painted their familiar stories. This was a profound, unsettling void, thick with the echoes of battle and the ghosts of sacrifice. The usual faint background radiation, the distant hum of cosmic phenomena, even the almost imperceptible thrum of their own tiny escape pod, seemed swallowed by an oppressive quiet. It was the silence of a battlefield after the last gunshot, the stillness of a grave. The stars, once familiar pinpricks of light, now seemed distant, cold, and indifferent, their familiar constellations twisted by the emotional weight of their impossible journey and the chilling knowledge of the cosmic horrors they had just averted. It was a silence that spoke of survival, yes, but also of profound, irreparable loss. Days later, the profound, unsettling silence of deep space was finally broken, not by the hum of their tiny escape pod, nor by the rhythmic thrum of their own anxious heartbeats, but by a faint, almost imperceptible whisper from the void. It was a sound that had once been utterly commonplace, taken for granted in the bustling lanes of galactic commerce and exploration. But now, after the cosmic maelstrom they had endured, it resonated with the profound significance of a distant hymn. Ensign Jax, his eyes sunken from exhaustion, his face still pale from the raw terror of the wormhole's implosion, was meticulously sifting through the pod's long-range sensor data, a task he had repeated hundreds of times since their escape, each scan yielding nothing but the monotonous, empty expanse. Then a flicker, a minute, insistent blip on the screen, so tiny it might have been dismissed as cosmic noise, but Jax's honed senses, sharpened by weeks of desperate vigilance, recognized its subtle, structured rhythm. "Commander," he murmured, his voice barely audible, thick with disbelief and a nascent, fragile hope. "I'm picking up a signal." Thorne, who had been staring blankly into the endless, star-dusted blackness, his mind replaying the final, agonizing moments of the Stardust, snapped instantly to attention. His eyes, heavy with grief and fatigue, fixed on the tiny blip. Petrova, roused from a fitful sleep by Jax's hushed urgency, leaned forward, her scientific skepticism battling with a desperate yearning for something, anything familiar. As the signal resolved, clarifying itself from the background radiation of the universe, its pattern became undeniable, unmistakable. A cascade of distinct, rhythmic pulses precisely modulated, a signature as unique and reassuring as a fingerprint. It was a distress beacon, yes, but more than that, it was the distress beacon. "It's Federation," Jax exclaimed, his voice cracking with a raw, unbridled relief that bordered on euphoria. Their long-range sensors, miraculously still functional, now displayed a series of telemetry codes, identifying not just the origin, but the intentionality of the signal. "They're looking for us," he cried, the words tumbling out in a rush, a profound acknowledgement that after everything, after the unimaginable displacement and the cosmic war they had unknowingly stumbled into, they were not entirely alone. The implications of that familiar cadence reverberated through their exhausted minds. It wasn't just a random transmission, it was a search pattern, a deliberate effort to find them, to reach out across the vast, indifferent void. This wasn't merely a sign of life, but a direct thread, a cosmic lifeline tossed into their infinite isolation. The beacon spoke not just of technology, but of connection, of a relentless, stubborn hope from beyond the edge of their known universe. It signaled that someone, somewhere, still remembered them, still cared enough to send out a search party into the very unknown. The initial shock of their profound displacement, the crushing weight of their immense loss, began to recede, replaced by a surge of pure, unadulterated relief. It was a tangible link to home, a promise that the world they had sacrificed so much to protect was still out there, vibrant and alive, and now actively reaching out to embrace them. The signal pulsated with a steady, unwavering rhythm, cutting through the darkness, an undeniable guide. It was a beacon not just of their location, but of their purpose, a confirmation that their sacrifice had not been in vain. The universe, which had seemed so utterly alien and terrifying just hours before, now held a glimmer of familiarity, a comforting whisper from their own reality. This wasn't the end, but the beginning of a long, arduous journey home, a journey guided by the unwavering light of a Federation beacon, the first fragile promise of sanctuary after the unimaginable horrors they had faced. The vast, empty expanse still surrounded them, a chilling reminder of their recent ordeal, but now it was punctuated by that persistent, rhythmic pulse, a tangible thread leading them back to everything they had fought so desperately to save. Back in Federation space, the escape pod, a battered and scorched testament to an impossible journey, was eventually retrieved by a passing patrol. Thorne, Petrova, and Jax were hailed as heroes, survivors of an inexplicable deep space anomaly. Their tales of spatial distortions and strange energy signatures met with a mixture of awe and bewilderment. They were debriefed extensively, their accounts meticulously recorded, analyzed, and ultimately filed away as an extraordinary yet unexplainable incident. Thorne stood before the assembled Federation Admiralty, their faces a mixture of concern and relief, their uniformed presence a comforting, yet almost surreal, anchor in a world that now seemed impossibly small. "We averted an extinction-level event," he stated, his voice calm, factual, devoid of the raw terror that still resonated within his soul. He spoke of the anomaly, of the Stardust's heroic, self-sacrificing act, of the successful sealing of the tear in space-time. But the true burden, the unspeakable horror, remained locked within his mind, a secret he would carry alone for the rest of his days. He omitted the Guardian, the magnificent, ancient entity woven from pure energy and light. He spoke nothing of the Crystal Citadel, that floating city of living light, nor of its ancient, dying inhabitants who had bestowed upon them the impossible knowledge. Most critically, he uttered not a single word about the Void Eaters, the shadowy, all-consuming intelligences that moved through the cosmos, devouring entire realities. How could he possibly explain beings that were not merely destructive, but fundamentally anti-existence, entities that consumed the very potential of life? The truth, raw and horrifying, was simply too much for them to comprehend. Too vast, too paradigm-shattering for the carefully constructed order of Federation science and diplomacy. The weight of that unspoken knowledge pressed down on Thorne, a silent, cosmic burden. He saw the proud, hopeful faces of the Admiralty, their earnest questions about ship schematics and energy signatures, and he knew that to reveal the true nature of the threat would not only be dismissed as madness, but would plunge their comfortable reality into an abyss of existential terror. They were not ready. Their technology, their understanding of the universe was simply insufficient to grasp the horror he had witnessed. He had protected them, not just from the Void Eaters, but from a truth that would surely unravel the very fabric of their society. It was a lonely heroism, a silent vigil maintained by a select few, who had seen behind the curtain of reality and glimpsed the true, terrifying nature of the universe. So he allowed them to believe the official narrative, a heroic sacrifice against an inexplicable anomaly. He accepted the medals, the commendations, the quiet deference born of incomprehension. But in the quiet moments, in the depths of his dreams, the chilling whispers of the Guardian still resonated in his mind. They harvest realities, and your galaxy is next. He saw the shadowy forms of the Void Eaters, their hunger for existence a cold, inescapable reality. He knew the war was not over, merely paused. The tear was sealed, yes, but the threat still lingered, a cancer in the cosmic fabric, waiting for another weakness, another opportunity. Thorne, the reluctant hero, was now the universe's secret sentinel, forever bound to a knowledge too profound, too terrifying for humanity to bear. He was home, but he was forever changed, haunted by the silent understanding of a lurking darkness that lay just beyond the veil of their perception. Months later, Commander Aris Thorne stood on the newly commissioned Stardust II's bridge, his gaze sweeping across the familiar, comforting tapestry of stars. The ship itself was a marvel, the culmination of years of Federation advancements, incorporating theoretical principles gleaned from Thorne's cryptic, sanitized debriefings. It was bigger, faster, and more resilient than its predecessor, a testament to humanity's relentless drive for exploration and perhaps unconsciously for defense. Yet for Thorne, it remained a phantom limb, a powerful, gleaming vessel that could never truly replace the Stardust that had been unmade, unraveled in the maw of a closing anomaly, a sacrifice he bore in the quiet chambers of his heart. The hum of the Stardust II's engines was a steady, reassuring thrum beneath his feet, a symphony of human ingenuity. But beyond it, beneath the layers of sound insulation and technological marvels, a faint, rhythmic pulse echoed in the deepest recesses of his mind. It was the Guardian's melody, the ancient song of the Crystal Citadel, a haunting, ethereal counterpoint to the ship's mechanical rhythms. It was a silent, personal reminder that the universe held dangers and allies far beyond the narrow scope of human understanding. This melodic whisper was not a burden but a beacon, a constant, subtle connection to a reality few others would ever glimpse. It was a testament to the profound exchange that had occurred, a fragment of an ancient consciousness embedded within his own, a living memory of a war fought on a cosmic scale. He sometimes wondered if Dr. Petrova and Ensign Jax, his fellow survivors, also heard it. They shared the trauma, the secret knowledge, but Thorne alone seemed to carry the Guardian's resonant song. It reminded him that while he stood on the precipice of known space, commanding a vessel of immense power, humanity remained, in many ways, innocents in a vast, complex cosmos. The Void Eaters were out there, a lurking darkness, and the Guardian's melody was both a warning and a promise. It hinted at future encounters, not just with unimaginable threats, but with equally unimaginable allies, beings and civilizations that existed on scales and in forms that defied human comprehension. The stars before him were no longer just points of light. They were signposts in a sprawling, multi-layered existence. Each distant sun could hide a civilization, a natural phenomenon, or a tear in the fabric of reality. He looked at the familiar constellations, the ancient star maps that had guided humanity for millennia, but now he saw them through a new lens, a lens gifted by an alien protector. The Orion Nebula, the Pleiades, the distant shimmer of the Milky Way's spiral arms, they were all part of a larger, grander narrative, a cosmic tapestry woven with threads of life and death, creation and consumption. The Guardian's melody served as a constant affirmation of this profound interconnectedness, a silent testament to the fact that isolation was an illusion, and that even in the vast emptiness of space, there were always unseen connections, unheard voices, and unknown destinies intertwined with their own. Thorne knew, with a certainty that transcended logic, that his role had shifted. He was no longer just a Starfleet commander. He was a silent sentinel, a keeper of a terrible secret, and a reluctant pioneer on the edge of a new understanding of existence. The Stardust II was not merely an exploration vessel. It was a silent scout, a vanguard against a threat that still lingered, unseen but ever present. And the Guardian's melody, that faint, rhythmic pulse within his mind, was his compass, his guide through the inevitable future. It was a promise that his path, and perhaps humanity's path, would lead them beyond the familiar, beyond the current limits of their understanding, into a cosmos far stranger, more dangerous, and ultimately more wondrous than they could ever imagine. The war for reality had just begun, and he, Commander Aris Thorne, was ready for the next encounter. The galaxy was safe for now. As Commander Aris Thorne stood on the bridge of the Stardust II, his gaze lingered on a distant constellation, seemingly pristine and untouched, a silent acknowledgement of the immeasurable sacrifices made and the profound knowledge gained. The peace they had secured was fragile, he knew, a delicate truce in a cosmic war that had only just begun for humanity. This impossible journey through the wormhole and beyond had etched an indelible mark on his soul, forever altering his perception of the universe itself. He was no longer merely a Starfleet commander. He was a sentinel, a keeper of secrets, burdened by a truth too vast for the unsuspecting masses. The stars, once familiar and comforting, now pulsed with hidden meanings, each pinpoint of light a potential portal to new wonders or unimaginable horrors. Thorne sometimes found himself tracing the familiar lines of constellations, ones he'd studied since childhood, and saw them transformed. The ancient hunter, Orion, seemed less a figure of myth and more a silhouette against an unseen enemy. The serene, luminous spiral of their own Milky Way felt less like home and more like a besieged fortress, its borders constantly tested by forces beyond human comprehension. He understood now that their perceived isolation was an illusion, a comforting lie they had unwittingly told themselves. The cosmos was a vibrant, perilous tapestry, woven with threads of countless civilizations, many of whom had faced or would face the very same threats he had glimpsed. This knowledge, though terrifying, also brought with it a profound sense of interconnectedness, a realization that humanity was but one small player on an infinitely grand stage. The quiet moments were often the hardest. When the hum of the ship was low and the crew was asleep, the Guardian's melodic whisper would return, a haunting symphony within his mind. It was a reminder of the Crystal Citadel, of its ancient inhabitants, and of the profound knowledge they had willingly bestowed, knowing it might be their last act of defiance. This melody, a fragment of an alien consciousness, was a constant companion, a testament to the fact that even in the vast, indifferent void, unexpected alliances could form, bonds forged in the crucible of universal struggle. It hinted at worlds yet undiscovered, beings yet unencountered, and conflicts that transcended any human concept of warfare. The universe was far stranger, more dangerous, and infinitely more wondrous than he had ever conceived possible. Thorne knew that his personal odyssey was far from over. The Stardust II, a testament to human resilience and ingenuity, was now more than just an exploration vessel. It was a spearhead, a vigilant scout in a cosmos that held both unimaginable beauty and lurking darkness. The wormhole was sealed, the immediate threat averted, but the Void Eaters were out there, a cancer in the cosmic fabric, patiently waiting. And he, Commander Aris Thorne, was ready. He carried the weight of sacrifice and the fire of knowledge, forever bound to a secret war, forever changed by his journey through the wormhole and beyond. The true adventure, he realized, had only just begun.